Hey guys, welcome to Seller Sessions. Today we bring in Anthony Lee. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing fantastic.
Excellent. Okay, so today's subject, we're going to be talking about Amazon sellers that are also service providers. So a little bit controversial here. You are a service provider as well as an Amazon seller, as well as a consultant. That's one thing. We provide seller sessions, but we don't currently sell any services. I'm not saying ruling out one day. I don't like really to do services, but if I was to co-own a business and I'm not doing so much of the heavy lifting, then it's a different story. I'd consider it. But yeah, I think, there's also that side where you've got software companies, haven't you? Have access to data and they're also Amazon sellers. So where do you land on this?
I love this topic. Well, I think it's obvious where I land. I'm both a seller and a service provider. I don't have a problem with it, but
Yeah,
I actually do have some strong thoughts and opinions on this subject because I see this brought up a lot. There's a
yeah,
lot of people out there that, it's not just sellers that bring up the idea that it might be, to them a conflict of interest, but there are other service providers that try to position themselves saying, hey, there's no conflict here.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I have a pretty strong opinion about all that. So,
Okay, so let's roll them off then.
all right. Well, obviously, I don't feel like it is a conflict of interest. And the reason is because if you're a good, solid, reputable service provider, you'll have NDAs and privacy policies in place that strictly prohibit the sharing of confidential customer information and the utilizing of that confidential customer information for your own benefit. It's no different than having a broker who manages your trades for you on a stock or commodity exchange. Like, this guy has your financial information. This guy knows where you're investing. If he does anything for his own personal gain, I think that's illegal, but also it's pretty widely viewed as,
Moral.
immoral and unethical. Does that mean that people don't do it? We've already seen it done. We've seen the debacle. I think the first time we saw it was with
Don't name them. Don't name them.
okay, a popular service that tracked keywords got bought out by a Chinese company, and that
Yeah,
Chinese company happens to be a huge reseller, and they were selling it like against all of, it was pretty evident that they were using that data to their own gain, and they got
yeah,
called out, and I think that part of the company suffered for it.
yeah,
And then another one everybody has talked about. Anyway, the point is it'll happen because there are unethical people out there.
yeah.
But does that mean you shouldn't have a PPC agency handle your ads because you don't trust what they might do with your account? Like,
I think
you
you
can't
just
live
nailed it
like
there.
that.
It's about trust. You just used the right word. It's trust. So
Hmm.
it's like with anything you want in business, in life, you want to deal with people, be around people that you like and you trust. But that's the step that you need to get to, because we understand is that I think if you look at Amazon, there's a lot of the fly by nights in Amazon, isn't there? Pumping out stuff, like kind of content marketers who, may be a little bit, wet around the whiskers, shall we say, maybe they'll jump from one industry to another and maybe their heart's not in the right place, people that can develop software for the wrong reasons, it's not like tools that help, but tools that can take from people and doesn't really have an uplifting benefit to it. But it's interesting, like you said, I think with you, like being a public person as well, because of public speaking and stuff, you obviously, it makes it even more difficult for you because anyone can just flame you if they wanted to. Do you see what I mean? Like leave negative comments or whatever. Not that they do, but they could
Well,
potentially.
they have.
Yeah, yeah. But I think it is like what you said. It goes back to the trust element, like you've just said about people buying software companies. Like one of the things I've done more and more, and I think, and my group back in the UK are very much the same. Is like you choose your software providers or your AWS access by the trust level of the people that you know. Do you know what I mean? It's like, because of the show and that, I could get loads of people offering me software for free. Now, I know a lot of software companies, and I have a lot of personal relationship, and these people are really lovely, down-to-earth people, you know, and I will be happy to trust them all day long, you know. But then how do you understand for a seller on the other side who don't have these relationships, and all they're looking at is from the outside looking in? How do you pick these guys? I mean, for instance, someone gave me a good tip a couple of weeks ago, is like judging a company by how much data they access for what they really need. You know, it's like you can ask seller support to run an aid report. They don't like doing it, but you can insist on it so you can see what they're pulling. So there might be one niche that they're in, but if they're pulling all your sales data, you're like, well, hold on a minute. Why do they need all this information?
I mean, and that's fair. But before I really answer that question, I want to clear up some misconceptions. There's a lot of people out there that think that when you give MWS authorization to anybody, that they have control of your account. That's not true.
Yeah.
All they can see is your data, and they can submit flat file feeds through the API to change your listing. Yeah. So the worst they can do is screw up your listing in Amazon, block it temporarily until you fix it, and then they see your data. So then the main argument is people are like, okay, well, they have my data, but I don't really understand what all of this protectiveness over data is. Like, essentially all your data is telling them is how much sales you're making. Well, they can use tools that exist out there right now to see that anyway. The only difference is they have your name. They know Danny's the guy selling these products, but it could just as easily find, if you're on page 1 for anything, how much you're selling, and essentially extrapolate what you're doing to get to page 1, and decide from there whether or not they want to go in that into that market. So going into answering your question, like, I completely understand people want to be guarded. I mean, we live in a day and age where, people do try to take advantage of you. But when we're talking about, like, I look at Amazon software companies the same way I look at ads agencies, right? So you vet them the same way you'd vet really any service provider. You look and you see if they have reviews, if they're reputable, like if they've been around, if they're not like, they just launched yesterday out of somebody's basement. And even then, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, you take a little bit more of a chance on how reliable they are. But but at the end of the day, the thing that most people have to realize is stealing your idea is not a part of their business model.
No.
Like, that's not, you know what I mean? Like, Sixleaf isn't in business to do that, because then we wouldn't have our software anymore. And we really like our software. We like building our tools. Our tools help our brands grow. So it's not the business model. But that's
it comes down to level of trust. You've built public trust with people, but like you just said in the same breath earlier on, is that you've got companies out there who say they've sold a software company, they're using that data to leverage. So let's just say you're selling you've got software that is based around product sourcing or giveaways or whatever it may be. It's like, from my understanding, if you're a Chinese seller and you don't understand Western culture, you might see a review group or a giveaway group. You go, right, I don't need to do any market research. It's all there. These seem to be popular products. I'll ship these out a lot cheaper. That's the point of the advantage of the data. Or, if you've got keyword tools and you're grabbing the data, or, products that you're selling, let's just say you've got a product management program that works out your P&L. If you've got access to all that data, you can say, right, this person here is doing a grand job. Like the company, I won't name them, but the company that I use for all of my products, and so does my partners use, I trust them all day long. They made a point of not being Amazon sellers because they didn't want that issue to ever come up, and they won't do any scraping or anything against terms of service. Because when you go, oh, can we have this feature and stuff like that, said it's scraping against TOS. See, that's my point in the conversation. I'm not saying about you, because people come to you and launch. At the end of the day, you're going to know what them products are. But people like you and know that they can trust you, because at the end of the day, they're dealing with with a person who's got a moral ground, you know, who actually.
Yes. I want to address what you just said, though. You just said that you deal with people that aren't sellers. Like, that's another thing. There are other companies out there that position themselves that, hey, you know, we're not sellers. Okay, here's the thing.
Yeah.
There's a couple points I want to bring up. It's kind of contesting that. The first one is, you know, how much can they really know about your business if nobody on the team is selling? If they're giving you any advice. The second thing is, if they are giving you advice and it's good advice, how do you know that nobody that works for them is a seller? Like, that's, you know what I mean? That's a bold statement to be like, oh, we have coaches and we have people that'll help you, but we're not sellers. Are you saying you're not a seller? Like, that's kind of dishonest to then be like, oh, but we have people on our team that are sellers. And then the last point that I want to make about that is the barrier of entry is so low. When you say, oh, well, I trust them because they're not sellers, if they want to steal your idea, all they got to do is sign up to be a seller tomorrow. You realize how long it takes to become a seller on Amazon.com?
Yeah.
Like, it's not, you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, we're not sellers and we're definitely not going to jump over that hurdle. Like,
but
come on, man, they can do it in 2 hours.
You know what I'm doing? I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm speaking about members of the audience and their different point of views on stuff. Like, for me, right? I'm a business owner. I'm building on Amazon. It don't matter how many storefronts or people I know within, you know, the industry and how well they're doing. I don't necessarily have all the resources or the capital to go after all of these. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's not like you can have access to this information. You can choose to act on it or not act on it, or you might not even have the resources to act on it. You know, it's a bit like it's like a product sourcing kind of software. There's numerous ones out there without having to name it. It's like they don't have the time to sit through all of that data and launch all those products because someone's found a bit of gold. Do you see what I mean? But it's for people to try and understand where we're coming from in this conversation. It's like people like to do business with the people they can trust. You've seen it with coupon codes and the way that people have built software to seek out people to wipe out Amazon sellers. Like, it depends on what side of the fence you sit. But like me, that's morally bankrupt to do that. Why would you do that? Why would you put your head on the pillow at night? But some people see that as an acceptable business model. But it's just where you fall.
Well, I mean, and like, I'm with you. Like, I see some of these practices. But here, first, I want to clarify that these practices against Amazon sellers have only happened a couple times. There are a lot of services, and of all of them, there's only been 2 cases I can see where the owner of a service has blatantly taken advantage of other sellers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I still think the risk is pretty low there, because I think that a lot of these services are genuinely trying to be services. That's where they're trying to make their money.
Yeah.
And actually, most of the services aren't run by sellers.
No,
there are guys out there that claim that they are sellers, and they're not. Like, I mean, they did some arbitrage like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, we're sellers. We're e-commerce. No, you're not. You run a software, man. There are plenty of that out there too.
Yeah.
But there are a couple that are run by genuine, actual sellers.
Yeah.
And of all the ones I can think of, like, I know these guys personally, and
exactly.
They're all in the public eye.
Yeah.
Well, but even if I didn't like really actually have ever met them, like, first of all, a couple of them I met at events. Like, I didn't meet them because I happened to be the COO of a SaaS. Like, I met them as an attendee. But even if I hadn't met them, they're public. You know what I mean? You can see what it is they're doing. They're very open. And I think that's an important part of doing business, is having a public face. So if there is a public face and it's not a nameless entity, you can look at them and you can make that decision. Do I trust this person? I will say this. I want to make a point for working with a service that's run by sellers.
Yes.
Like, a service that's run by sellers is often like a kitchen run, a chef run restaurant, right?
Yeah.
Like, not all of them are, okay? And not everybody likes the ones that are. But foodies who really appreciate food, a lot of times you'll see on their list of top restaurants, they are chef run restaurants because, you know, like, it's all about the food. And that's kind of how it is with these services. Like, when sellers run it, we are developing these tools to help our own businesses. So they really do get to the heart of the matter a lot quicker, I think, in some cases. I'm not going to put anybody down just because they're not sellers. It's just you got to understand, you wouldn't hire a consultant that had never sold before.
Yeah.
So think about that when you're thinking about the kind of services you want to also hire
Yeah.
or utilize.
No, totally. But this is the whole point. Playing devil's advocate, you're a service provider. I'm not a service provider yet. That could change in the future. Then I have to address my position as someone, let's just say I got involved in a project or a business and we've become a service provider. Then I would also give the opportunity for the people providing the service for me to opt out the equation. Do you see what I mean? To make them feel comfortable. But that will also be dependent on the kind of service and the business that you would offer. But that's just down to being transparent, I suppose. But really, this debate's really about for people on the outside looking in, sellers out there who wants to know, well, what do I do when I want to trust my data to places? Do I plug in this tool? Because let's look at some of these, like, for instance, the refund programs. I don't know the details for it, so I'm not going to commit either way, but there are some cases where people said that on the refunds program they got suspended on their account because of that. I don't know how true that is, but that's the other thing that you've got to look at as well, haven't you?
I'm pretty confident that it did happen a while back. It hasn't happened in a while because the issue was addressed. But the thing is that wasn't an issue with dealing with an untrustworthy company. That was the way they handled it, and they just made a mistake in handling it, and they honestly didn't know it would get anybody in trouble.
Yeah.
Amazon makes it hard. It's a difficult landscape sometimes to navigate, and both for service providers and sellers. I'll tell you a totally true, candid story. I can't believe I'm about to tell this story. Back in the early days, okay, when I was doing listing optimization consulting, all right, I optimized this guy's listing, and I mean, I had never done this type of listing before. He was selling matcha tea. I didn't know anything about matcha tea, but I looked it up, and I saw this stuff about like chelated minerals and detoxing the system. So I put that in the listing. Within minutes, this dude gets his listing suspended, and it's because it's apparently against the law, according to the FDA, to sell chelated or chelation products that do any kind of treatment to heavy metal toxicity or anything like that. Like, this is illegal. And if you make these claims, you are breaking the law. And Amazon was like, you can't sell this product. Like, it wasn't just a listing
so for clarity,
suspension.
chelation,
like, you can't sell this product.
As I understand it, what they're concerned about is that with the chelation, so you're detoxing for heavy metals, it's like a carrier to bring it out the body. The chelation part, is that right? So, for instance, like, you could detox, but it could go into your bloodstream and other areas of your body. I'm not up on this area completely, but from my understanding, the chelation part is the carrier, so it can actually come out your system without the dangers of going into your bloodstream and stuff. Is that right?
I'm not fully sure. This is a long time ago. I don't remember the details of what I read. I know that there were a lot of products out there that claim that this is what it does. Right. All I know is from the legal side, if you sell a product and you claim anything involving chelation and you don't have the proper FDA certification, which is a tough thing because it's not just as simple as paying them. It's not like medical device certification. Like, you don't pay them. Like, you got to be a pharmaceutical company to do this. If you make that claim, then you get shut down. Like, advertisers are not allowed to do it. So anyway, this poor dude was told, this product can't be sold. That was a mistake. It sucked. It probably left a really bad taste in his mouth. I ended up having to come out of pocket a little bit, to kind of help that situation. And then I wrote his appeals. Thankfully, the appeals worked. Got his listing back. Whew, dodged that bullet, because I can't imagine what I would have done had he not gotten it back. But moral of that, so that just kind of illustrates that, it's a difficult landscape. Sometimes Amazon changing the rules can make it hard. I think if you're dealing with it, I mean, if you're ever curious, just ask. I think if you're dealing with a company that is dedicated to trying to follow terms of service, then they're gonna shift as Amazon shifts because they want to stay within terms. And that's actually another good case for having a company, a service that's run by sellers. Because if the sellers use the service, they definitely don't want the service to go against terms, because that's our accounts that are on the line too. You know what I mean? Like, and that could actually be an argument for the case, because
let's kind of top down everything now. So we've had the debate, right? I'm trying to play devil's advocate. You've got to work from both sides of the equation. You're on one side of the fence, the seller is on the other. They need to engage in these services. So you've made some good points here in the sense that it's important that someone knows either how to sell on Amazon or existing seller on Amazon, because they need to navigate those waters in order to make a better service, regardless of the service. Like listing optimization, you need to keep your chops up. You need to keep your hand in the game. So that's an important metric. We've also discussed that if you're a successful seller, like we've got software companies and sellers out there, like massive brand names, do amazing things. They haven't got time to be stealing ideas off of other sellers, and they had the right moral compass as well. Do you see what I mean? There's the long-term view and there's the short-term view of stuff. But obviously this is really about is that can people get suspended? Are people taking too much data? And you don't need 60% of the information. You have to question, well, why are they pulling this information?
I can play devil's advocate on that. I understand that. However, when you're talking most of these services are also pretty new, because this is a pretty new space.
Even
the ones that are established are still new and growing.
So they're sucking on the fire hose,
Well, a lot of times extra data is being pulled because new services are being developed. So you don't want to freak out and pull the trigger and be like, oh, I see that you pulled this data. You don't need this data. It's like, well, we're only doing that because we're literally about to offer you a new service. And you know what I mean? Like, and sorry, my bad. So like, you know what I mean? Like that can go either way too. So I really think it's important to be open-minded and be willing to have these conversations with your service provider.
Okay. And then how would a seller pick a service? Not like yours, just any service. If you're in a space, what decision-making should they go under in terms of selecting the right company for them?
Well, I think the way that they do it currently is not a bad way, and we do it the same way that we do everything. The first place you go is your network. You ask people, is anybody using this for feedback emails? Which one, what has your experience been? Trying to find somebody, a recognizable name that's doing a good job for somebody That's probably the best way. If you don't have any suggestions for a service, then the next thing you want to do is, do your due diligence. Look up their website, do a who is on it. For those of you who don't know how to do a who is, you literally just Google who is : and then the website, and a bunch of different options will pop up. And this is where you can see, unless they've made it private, you can see like who runs the website and like where their office is located. Look up their Manta or their BBB or their other information to try and find out where they're located. If you can find the transparent information online, you can feel better. At very least, where their home office is. So if they do something that makes you unhappy, you could physically go there and confront somebody. If you can't find any of that information, then maybe hesitate, maybe because that takes the power away from you, and it puts all of it on the service provider. At that point, all of your trust has to go to them. I would say, just like any service, just do your due diligence until you find enough information about them to make you feel comfortable, and then you're holding some of the cards, and then move forward. And if they're communicative, they answer your questions, if they're willing to work with you, if you feel like they want your business, and they perform, then you found a good service. If they fail on any of that, it really doesn't matter. All the other stuff doesn't matter. Like if they fail on any of that, then you're going to want to find a new service anyway.
I do this with people that I do know and don't know. If I embark on another service, the first thing I'll do is raise a support ticket or a contact form and time how long it takes for them to respond. And that's normally a good indication of their service as well. Because ultimately, you don't want to get too far on board with someone. You go through the onboarding process and you find out their customer service is hideous.
Yeah, it takes 48 hours, and you're
Yeah.
You're in the middle of a promotion. Like, that's terrible.
Yeah. And don't forget, like, you might sign up for something. It gives you like 7 days. And then suddenly the first thing you do is your AWS gets stuck. And then they
Right.
come back to you after the 5th day. And you've not tried to use the software in any way, shape or form. I mean, I've left a couple of services because of really poor lead time on customer service. I expect with a service outside of weekends that at least 24 hours. I think if you're a software company, if you can, it goes back to the Amazon thing. If we got respond on Amazon in less than 24 hours, most people I know do, and they try and do it within 4 to 6 hours where possible. At least I know I do, and people I speak to. But if you're dealing with a software company that is longer than 24 hours, I don't think you've got an excuse. You either can afford to run a software company and have the staff to do it, or you can't, because that's for me, another level of trust.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
So cue Anthony getting loads of emails. I'm joking.
I'm not the support guy.
No. Yeah, you'll be using bots. Yeah, you get a support bot Q&A. What was it? Come back like the FAQs.
I feel like that would be such a good idea. I want to look into that. Anyway,
is there anything? And don't forget, guys. Everyone who's listening, this isn't a beat down on services whatsoever. This is purely an exercise for Amazon sellers to find the best way to find the services that they should be working with and how to find them and who to trust. We're just having a debate in between.
And I love it. We're actually debating most of the time, like 98% of everything we talk about, we agree on. But this time we actually got to butt some heads on ideas. And I think that's great. I think this episode's going to rock. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. Cool. Anything you'd like to add finally?
No, I think that covered all of my points, and as far as the argument for trusting services that are run by sellers, and your devil's advocate pointing out some of the stuff that sellers could be concerned about. I think it's a good conversation, and I think it's an important one.
How can people reach you? Tell them the email that they're going to start spamming now, because you're going to answer it in less than 6 hours.
Right. Anthony@sixleaf.com. You can reach me there. I'm also a really big fan of Facebook Messenger. I just think it's so efficient, especially because I have Facebook Messenger on my phone. So if you look up the unofficial Anthony Lee page, you can actually message me there. And I do disseminate some information through there too, about this business and all that. So
excellent. Cool. Okay, guys, thanks again for joining us, Anthony. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to having you back again soon.
Thank you for having me.